Hi, everyone.
Hi.
But not essentialism. Effortless by what's his name? Effortless. Love it. Okay, so
I don't know how
so
to
listen.
pronounce his last name.
Can
Last
you
time we talked about it, you kind of stumbled over it, and I kind of judged you in my mind.
Ewan McGregor? I'm just kidding.
Tried it. I was like, there's a reason.
McKeown. I think it's McKeown.
No, it's an E and then an O.
I got a board game for him. Can you go get it's on the table? Can you go get a gift sack and tell Dad to get Zelly, please? Oh,
How are
yes.
you?
I'm good. I'm just trying to pull up my notes from the book, and I saved them under, of course, my MHB profile because I was told to read this book by my boss, and now we're talking about it. So, and you know what? I saved them in my phone. Okay, we're all over the place. Okay. So, I'm okay. I'm trying to I feel like I read Essentialism, you know what I mean? And I was a little bit like, okay, he sounds like he thinks life is really easy. And then I read Effortless and I was like, okay, he's lived a little bit more. And I think I enjoyed the book a lot better, though I will say that I feel like it was practical, but I felt it was less practical than Essentialism. But in a good way, I think. He didn't really give a whole lot of
Well, he was really about principles rather than methods.
yes.
That was his big
He didn't give a lot of tips. He just gave principles.
yeah, which is cool.
What were
Well,
your
I'm
thoughts?
doing great. I look like I'm glistening right now, but it's because I have hydrocortisone cream on my eyelids because I've had some sort of allergic reaction for 3 weeks. So, yay, summer.
Well, you're glowing, you know?
I know I'm glowing, but I
I'm
just
just
want everyone
sweating
I just
again
needed you to know that I'm not glowing from glamour, I'm glowing from
from
histamines.
histamines, antihistamines. Is it histamines or antihistamines?
Well, cortisone is a steroid, so it's basically just blocking the antihistamines, but,
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't know.
So let me see here. I literally I'm gonna bring up this me. I was trying to find a screenshot of the book I thought I took, but I didn't take it. And it's a quote. It says, I don't do politics. Well, babe, politics is doing you, me, and us. And I kind of feel like this connects to the book because it's basically just talking about I don't need a method. I don't need to I could just do things. And it's your method is not doing anything. So it's and he kind of points that out. You think that you're so chill and you don't need a method and you'll just do it your way. And it's this, but you actually end up you
Yeah,
are
then the
doing some sort
residual
of method.
results will be whatever you don't want it to be,
Exactly.
which was helpful for me. I mean, I've really been struggling, to be honest, with productivity and what that means and what progress means. Because I'm freelancing, I just have so much more control over what I do and don't get to do.
Right.
And I'm realizing that a huge part of my productivity in the past was panic, pressure, and actually there's not a third one, just panic and pressure. And I'm realizing that it's very different when you are the one suffering. If you don't I have to get stuff done, but there is leeway for me sometimes between whether I'm working, 10 hours on this or 20 hours on this. Not to say that I'm adding time that isn't needed to a project, but it's very much whatever work you can do. And so, it's hard because I'm the one that needs the money, but I'm also the one that if it's not a good day, I'm not sitting here feeling gut-wrenching guilt because I'm only billing for what I worked, right? And so
Right.
there's always been this sort of ethical work, sort of this workhorse mentality for me in the sense that if you are aligned with a mission and you are aligned with a company, yeah, you're not indentured to that company, but you have made some sort of contract with that company and they're giving you a lot of stuff. And so anyway, so I've always kind of been very strongly affected by that. And that's been a huge motivational point for me. I've felt at times when I didn't want to work. And so it's been harder when my loyalty is really just to myself and my bottom line versus any sort of ethical you could probably skate and do nothing today, but you work for this company and you don't want to be the person that isn't giving their best, and so it's interesting how he really leaned into the sort of Puritan ethic at the beginning of the book because I've always found that really fascinating.
Like, yeah, I thought that was really crazy that he brought up the Puritans because we've talked about the Puritans so many times. But like
Mhm.
that whole like just work for work's sake is great.
I
And
also
if
find it
you're gonna
interesting that
ignore the effort and whatever. Yeah.
he's clearly a Christian of some denomination. So I found it also interesting that that was coming up for him.
Is he Catholic? I'm gonna look it up right now. Probably non-denominational.
No, because he quotes the Bible.
Oh no.
Is he Mormon? Okay.
Church of Jesus
Okay,
Christ of
well,
Latter-day Saints. Okay, so that makes
so
sense.
that makes a lot of sense because actually Mormons in general, I feel like they're fairly joyful, you know, and but it's also
Yeah.
like they're in direct contrast to the whole Puritan thing. But anyway, my whole point being like sometimes this whole Puritan thing feels like very unspoken about. And it's probably unspoken about because probably the people that are religious are the ones thinking about it more rather than the people that aren't. So yeah, I mean, it's a big thing, and I'm thinking a lot about it, about how much I love the principles in this book and how much I'm struggling to think that I have the life where I could do this and still like the life I want, make the effort I want, be the person I want.
You know, I think it's easy to take any self-help book and like try to be like, okay, this is like, the Bible and we're going to follow this, or like clearly they have their shit together more than me, but like one of the things he said which I think opened it up more for me, like okay, I think it's really easy and it's not the fault of the reader, it's kind of the fault of the writers. They have this like we're perfect, follow me thing and follow this system and this system works, but like this book, much like Subtle Art of Not Giving a whatever, excuse me, like essentialism was like, you guys are all wasting your life. Like you need to just be essentialist.
Why are you like that?
Why are you like that? And which I like kind of needed that at the time, but if I were to read that now, like I could read it again and it would still be good. But like Effortless, like talks about his own struggles, which kind of like brings him down to earth for me. Like in like realizing, and we talked about this when I was like talking about the book to you first before we decided to read it, was the basically like having like what if all the rocks don't fit in the jar?
Yeah.
And the thing that he talks about is like, sometimes they don't all fit in the jar. And then you kind of have to like, whatever. But he also just talks about like turning things into like rituals. This is what's so interesting. So I think when I think of ritual, I think complicated. I think like tedious. I think like, oh, all of the things have to be perfect. But like a ritual, like surrounding our habits, like to make the habit like fun, or whatever. Like if we don't have a ritual, we do have a ritual, like much again, like if you don't think
Ritual
you're
is this
political,
is
you
the
are
worst.
political.
If we don't have a ritual, the ritual is probably this is the worst.
Exactly. So I like, yeah, what did you think of that concept of like ritual? Like, did that do it for you at all? Like, I was just like thinking, because not to be like whatever, but I think you're like a pretty like ritualistic person. Like we, or even not right now, like we both want our tea, like we want,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And this is what kind of
Yeah,
like,
and I like decided I was gonna get the little Swedish cookies, and like part of it was like it could just be tea or it could be tea and cookies.
right.
I think I
Like,
understand
will
what you're getting
ritual
at.
save our lives?
So, as a bit of an obsessive compulsive psychology, it all works really well for me in my head. There was a time where I was reading this and I was just kind of like, there's still this feeling though that this is once again, if you don't do all this, it won't be okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another issue with self-help and productivity is everyone has their own unique thought patterns. I think that as a world, I think we are becoming more and more aware of how some patterns that people have are just truly not, not good.
Yeah.
I don't think that like OCD will be underdiagnosed in 20 years. So I am curious to understand like what'll it look like when we realize that probably there's a large percentage of people that are still looking at these things, I mean myself included, holding and clawing onto them as a means of safety, right? How do you provide help and how do you suggest that something is good in a world where that's also true, but probably some of the people that are most likely to be reading this book are also statistically possibly also struggling with some stuff. I mean, like, it takes a certain person to be really interested in self-help, especially getting into this sort of behavioral economics thing. So that was the thing that really came up for me. First of all, was like, okay, great, but like, isn't this just one more compulsion, like one more ritual that is going to create safety or create whatever? And we have to. There's actually a book I do want us to read. It's called Obsessive Compulsive Magical Thinking. But there is the line between hope and magical thinking. You know what I'm saying? And I think so much self-help industry is truly about harnessing hope, which is completely valid. We need hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I
the thing
mean, yeah, go ahead.
the thing that really struck me though was that Greg, we'll call him Greg, our friend Greg, when he was talking about removing steps from the process, I was really struggling with that. In like a positive way, I was like, I love this. I love this. But I was really having a hard time recognizing a ritual as something that could be simpler than rather than more complicated than. And I think that that's the thing is like for me, a risk reducing ritual is usually more complicated because I still believe that like the harder we work, the better something will be.
Ooh.
And so I'm excited about maybe test driving rituals when I've intentionally made them less than what I thought they could be.
Right. Okay. So that is really, and it's like, I just read this book. You just read this book. And that's a little bit of like, he doesn't really give us a lot. And it kind of hurts my brain that he doesn't give us a lot because I want like those like 5 steps or whatever. But
Yeah,
the
I will
thing
say it
is,
was a very easy read. Like,
it was.
not that self-help isn't generally pretty okay to read,
Right.
but there have been like if I was gonna read a Malcolm Gladwell, for example, like I wouldn't be flying through it the way I felt
No,
like
I love Malcolm Gladwell. I just
he's
have to say that.
fantastic.
And I would love to talk about, if we haven't already talked about, we should talk about Talking to Strangers. Great book.
We've definitely talked about it. We haven't talked about it.
We haven't talked about it on here, so we should definitely do that. But I just want to say that like okay. So these are like, okay, let's summarize a little bit here, and these are like the 3 things that struck me, right? Okay. So number 1, it was the idea or concept that we can, give the first draft and we don't need to go back and edit. So he was going to a conference
Yeah.
and
I saw myself in that.
well, right. So he wrote a presentation and then the whole presentation story. So he writes a presentation and then he's like, I want to present this. But then he decided to change the entire thing and then he ended up not getting the gig. And it was just really funny because it's like we can overdo it. And I like,
You've talked about this before. We call it grandmaing it, right?
yes, because I talked about the drawing with the grandma who had Alzheimer's and she was an artist. And so she would keep drawing so much she would screw up her paintings. Like this was a friend of mine growing up. And it was really sad, but it was like just kind of crazy because I literally coasted through college kind of like this and I did just fine. I'm doing just fine, everybody. Like,
I
and
did not.
well, reading this book, I was like, damn, like, and I ended up getting that A, on that stupid play. And I was reading this and I was like, this book helps me feel way less guilty about kind of coasting it a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I thought though.
By coasting, I need to rephrase this. Like, I would not edit my papers and I needed to probably edit them. Like, I needed to edit them once. I was pretty bad sometimes and would
And
turn
I would
them
probably
into
edit them
different.
so many times. I got in trouble for errors because I had it had become something and I just wanted it to be more than it. Okay, so
I got in trouble for errors too, but like they liked my concepts. They understood what I was saying,
yeah, well, sometimes you're so in the weeds that it's like you like your concept. I always liked my concepts. I don't know if they always liked my concepts. And sometimes it was like, this is very interesting, but blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's just go back though, because there's this model of 3, right? There's effortless state, effortless action, and effortless results.
Okay.
And so Greg breaks it down into, this is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Effortless state, he talks a lot. That's where he brings up, the Puritan thought process. That's where he talks a lot about Steph Curry and the process of just shooting a basket over and over and over again, and how so much of performance is getting into this effortless state, which then allows you to actually do what you are capable of doing. Effortless. So like an example that I thought was really interesting was inversion. That was one of the steps, the tips for effortless state. What if this could be easy? Just asking yourself, what if this could be easy? What if this could be easy? And
I really liked that concept as well.
I only do that when things are really like I can see things careening off a cliff. Like my what if this could be easy
As if they're all exploding. Yeah.
is that like they're exploding, and I just was like, wow, I know I can do this. We can all do this, but like,
Yeah.
what would it take for me to like unclench for a minute and just like let that happen?
Well, and I think that's like, and this connects to that, but it's like, even it's like literally in the Amazon description, but it's like, what if, preventing frustration by solving problems before they arise? Like it's actually like counterintuitively like proactive, like the effortless state is proactive and it's that doing the basketball
Yeah.
over and over again. Right. And
I
it's
also
like,
find that difficult. I find that difficult though because I compulsively scan the future for problems.
right. But
This is
that's not what
something
helps us. What helps us is
that's
the
not what helps
doing
us,
the
but it's
thing.
like I will say this for anyone with OCD, let's make sure that you're doing okay before you read this book. Probably not. It's good, but just know that if you feel you're having issues with the ethics of effort, which is 100% an issue when it comes to the obsessive compulsive mind, it's the am I doing as I ought? Am I giving myself to the world with the amount of intention and effort that I hope to give to other people, knowing that I am a human that creates actions that create consequences? If you're struggling with that, this is probably not the right book for you right now.
Well, okay. So leave us with the last description now. I've got to run to a birthday party, my
Yeah. Okay.
favorite.
Effortless action and effortless results. And there's the sort of linear versus residual results, and the idea that automate the things that are important, but make the things that are not low tech. So, like, for example, it'd probably be better not to have recurring bills for things that are not important because
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
it's going to keep going. So, right, if we need to manually remember to pay our Hulu account or something like that, actually can't even do that anymore. You
Yeah.
can't even not manual or not. It was cool. I do have to say though, there's this part where Greg talks about his friend who got A's throughout school. And
Uh-huh.
Greg was talking about how he didn't. And my
Uh,
next question though was, okay, Greg, but is your friend a 2-time best-selling author? Like, I'm sorry, but that's where my brain went. Because I'm still struggling with that. Because the fact that Greg was overcomplicating his school projects, to some extent, there is a line connecting that to the person who's a consultant for businesses. Now, I really do want to know what's happening to his friend who simplified, who like only gave the teachers what they wanted. But it felt a little
well,
logically.
so yes. Okay. So tying this in though, like I read Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell or whatever. Which is another good business book. And he talks about this concept and he talks about Bill Gates and he talks about Oprah Winfrey. And I'm sorry, but Oprah Winfrey and Bill Gates are way more successful than Greg McKeown. I mean, just
McKeown.
McKeown can't. Sorry, Greg.
I
I'm
don't know.
sorry. So, but basically, he talks about their schedules for the day, and only 2 hours of Oprah Winfrey's schedules are spent on work. Only 2 hours. Like it's so systemized that like it's like the
No, I hear
4 hour work week concept. And like, I'm sorry, but that woman is freaking successful. And I think
okay,
like
but what was she like when she was 34?
I think she was probably figuring out how do we get here and we can't keep spinning our wheels like an insane person or we're going to lose our mind and die like Steve Jobs. I'm sorry, excuse me. But like, like we have to think that, and I think that people are like hard work, but it's like a lot of times the hard work people like took shortcuts or their life was ruined. You know what I'm saying? And it's
Yeah.
like,
I'm
I don't
just
want to be
really
Oprah Winfrey, but
still
like, yeah,
I want to accept this. I want
right,
to, and
right.
I haven't like let it into my heart yet. I'll finish off with a quick anecdote though. Greg talks about his son and the Pinewood Box Derby competition. And I actually screenshotted that and sent it to my dad because 20 years ago, my dad was telling me a story about when he did that competition and how his dad, my grandfather, got really, really, really into it. Like he hollowed out the center and filled it with lead to give it more weight. And like, and my grandfather was like a inventor slash artist slash just whatever, fantastic woodworker, cabinet maker. And I remember my dad kind of talking about how it kind of took over the project and it no longer really felt like his project anymore. Um, so I sent my dad this thing because I like was wanted him to see that his experience, he wasn't the only Boy Scout who wasn't actually doing their work. Like he wasn't the only Boy Scout
Totally.
who
Totally. Who was sabotaged by their dad, or whatever. And it's just that's so funny. That is
yeah,
so funny.
disconnected from this project, not because it's bad, but because it's not their bad.
I don't know, I think that, like, this is my last final thought on this because I gotta go. But it's like, if we think about it this way, like, there are, like, literally, like, 2 points in life, really, and it's usually has to do with, like, the survival and, like, loving and connecting to other people. That's it, right? And, like, yes, there's all of this stuff, there's all of this white noise, but if you're really taking each of your essential things and, like, you're thinking, okay, whatever it is, whatever your values are, you don't have as many values as you think you do. You know what I mean?
Talked about
Or
that.
right, and, like, you're wasting our time, and, like, that's kind of the point, all of these, like, values, for this and we're missing out on, like, the top 2 values or whatever it is. Like, I don't think there's gonna be more than 3 per person. And, like, a lot of people's values nowadays are, like, entertainment is you know what I'm saying? Like, to be entertained, that's the value. And that is, like, not a great value, and, like, I don't wanna do that. And the thing is, like, when I'm giving that the biggest amount of time on accident, like, I am not loving and connecting to other people, right? And so, like, if we put, like, relationship above everything else, like, things do spin out better, I think, And, like, I guess it's just, like, I think people get these concepts in their head about, and maybe you are, maybe I am, about, like, who, celebrities are, their hard work or New York Times bestseller, like, how do they get there? It must have been the hard work. And it's, like, a lot of times it's been their connections, like, up in the society, which is, by the way, formed by relationship, which has to do with love, which is a big, huge value of, like, most human being nature.
Yeah.
So I just think it's interesting because it's like, yeah, sure, but, like, if we can die any second, like, do we want to be like, oh yeah, I was spinning my wheels for days on end, or do we want the connection? I don't know, dude. But it's just like, I don't know. Like, we should maybe, like, I think we need a piggyback book off of this. So we'll
I
decide.
will say I decided to make this a effortless week inspired by
Nice.
this book. And there were moments where I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna just do this. And I like got more work done. And then the final thing I'll say is that one thing I want to keep unpacking in my work is the upper and lower bounds. This idea of what's the thing you have to do this every day. And then also like, what does it look like when you don't want to burn yourself out so you can't recover to do the same thing the next day? So it was the lower bounds of productivity and the upper bounds of productivity. And I thought that was really useful. And I'm gonna be exploring that in my work
Yeah.
and what I think a day looks like.
What if instead we consider the possibility that the reason something feels hard is that we haven't found the easier way to do it? It's not saying don't do things.
Mhm.
I'm like, that's what is interesting. Anyway, go kill it. Okay, all right. Love you. I'll see
Bye.
you soon. Bye.